In the bright courtroom where truth often walks in nervous shoes, Judge Judy looked up and asked in that steady voice that makes hearts skip, "You're Miss Pedersen?" And a woman answered yes, with her daughter at her side, chin stiff, eyes hot. Across from them stood a younger woman from a small-town bakery. Jade Cowdery, hands tight around a small folder, and in those first seconds you could already feel the room split into two versions of the same story, as if the wood walls were choosing sides. This fight had started far from the courtroom, inside a rented house that Miss Pedersen owned, and where daughter Addie lived. A house that smelled like old books and sugar, because Jade had worked for Miss Pedersen at the bakery for almost a year, waking before dawn to pull bread from the oven, dusting everything with flour like first snow, while she and her partner Tally looked for a place to live, safe, simple, quiet. The idea had seemed perfect. Move into Addie's house, share the space, pay $400 a month. Split into two $200 payments because life comes in pieces. School, shifts, the rent clock always ticking. Judge Judy checked the dates like a careful drummer counting beats. Move in around January 2013. Move out on May 13th. 5 months of trying to balance kindness and rules. All of it fine until one weekend when a small bright thing trotted into the story. A puppy. The puppy had soft ears and big eyes, and the kind of tail that writes joy in the air. But to Miss Pedersen, it was a rule breaking on 4 legs, and she said no, not until we talk and agree. No, not in the house. The puppy left the house, yes, but the happiness didn't. And that tiny dog became a tiny wedge that pressed every crack wider. Because where there is a pet, there is love, and where there are rules, there is pressure. Still, underneath the dog and the rules, the main drum kept beating. Rent. Judge Judy pushed on the money question with the sharp finger of truth. Was the first $200 for May paid or not? Miss Pedersen and Addie said no receipt, no cash, no proof. Jade said yes. Yes, we always paid. We worked hard. We put the money on time. You just never gave receipts. The room felt like a seesaw with 2 rocks and a feather. No paper trail, only memory and anger. But then came May 13th, moving day, boxes like quiet soldiers lined up by the door, tape ripping the air, the sound of leaving. Addie saw Jade packing and said, "You have not paid this month and you must give 30 days notice." That's the rule of tenants, the grown-up way, the only way. Voices rose. A call went to Mother Pedersen, the one who handles the money. Another call to partner Tally. Things moved fast like a plate that slips and shatters. In the middle of the boxes sat a laptop, the kind of modern heart that holds photos and letters and passwords and bills. And Addie said she took that laptop and moved it to her side of the house. Not stealing, she said, just setting it aside. "I would really like the rent," she told them. Each word a push. The air turned sharp. Outside, Mother Pedersen took the laptop to Tally. To calm things down, to hand it over, to stop the fuse from reaching the powder. Inside, Jade says she was yelled at, told rough words, dared to punch, told to fight, but she wouldn't. Then a scream ripped the day, the kind of scream that makes you run before you think, "Get back inside and lock the door." Mother Pedersen shouted. Bodies rushed, shoulders hit, a body bump, a shove, a door frame like a jaw. Someone says Addie's hands were in the air when the police arrived. Someone says Tally never even went inside during the clash. Someone says a knife was mentioned. Someone else says that's a lie. The sirens ended the shouting, but they did not end the story. There were cuffs, a report, a charge, a day in criminal court where fast words and slow systems swirl. Addie paid a fine, not for domestic violence, she insisted, for misdemeanor battery after it changed on appeal. But Judge Judy shook her head at the attitude, because sometimes the way you answer a question tells the court more than the question itself. Still, Judge Judy kept her eyes on the path. This was a civil day, a day about rent and things and proof, not a day to refight the criminal case. "If you thought they were stealing, you could have called the police before the fight," she said to Addie with a voice like a clean cut. "Or waited, and then sued. But you don't grab people's stuff to force payment. You don't light the match and then blame the flame. And the rent?" Judge Judy weighed the pattern. Months paid, no past issues. A puppy brought home like people do when they feel settled. She leaned toward Jade's side. They likely did pay that first May $200. Then came the thing that turns a simple move-out into a story with an old soul. Opera glasses. Small, polished, irreplaceable, bought in England, full of evenings and music and memory. Miss Pedersen swore they sat on a shelf near the boxes on their side, and that after the chaos those glasses were gone. Sold, she said, at a pawn shop across the street, the kind of place with bright lights. Dusty velvet and cameras on the ceiling. She brought photos of shelves before and after, photos of the yard, and a smear that she said was blood. Anger leaves marks. But what she did not bring was the one thing the law loves more than stories. A pawn receipt with a printed signature, or surveillance video showing Jade or Taylor walking in with the little binoculars. Judge Judy asked the simple yes-no that turns liars pale. Did you pawn anything at a pawn shop in the last 2 years? Jade said no. Taylor said no. And without the slip of paper, without the video, without the nexus that ties a missing thing to a living person, the claim fell like a cake without eggs. Judge Judy reminded everyone that pawn shops always keep records. Always, not sometimes. And if you want the court to believe, you bring the proof, not the feeling. There was also the counterpunch from Jade, after the blow-up, she says. Miss Pedersen fired her from the bakery. Retaliation, she called it. But Judge Judy met that claim with hard logic. I wouldn't keep you and my daughter under the same roof of a small business either. If I have to choose between an employee and my child, I choose my child. That's not a legal wrong. That's a life choice. So the court set that piece aside like a cracked plate. Then Jade tried to list small baking supplies she left behind, spatulas, tools, odds and ends. But Judge Judy doesn't spend graduate school time on $5 spatulas. She snapped the case back to what matters. Clear, provable loss. Jade also raised assault claims from that day, but no one had filed a police report for her side, by mutual agreement, they said. A truce made to avoid deeper trouble, and so that too had no legs in civil court. Bailiff Byard stood calm, watching the waves pass, ready to say parties are excused when the gavel's shadow fell. And through all this, the room kept replaying the same human loop. Good intention, blurred boundary, messy exit. Miss Pedersen felt they had bent over backward, offering a home out of pity, tears in the doorway, a soft-hearted daughter trying to be both landlord and roommate. Jade felt her life pressed and pushed. Threats at the door, hands on shoulders, a mother's fingers near a throat, a wall at her back. A day that should have been simple turned into a headline. Each side carried their own bruise. One from feeling used, the other from feeling cornered. But the mirror of a courtroom is not for feelings. It is for facts, dates, dollars, documents. And Judge Judy, who can smell a weak claim like smoke, made the path plain. If you think tenants are stealing, don't block the door with your body or hold their laptop hostage for rent. Call the police or wait and sue. If you say someone pawned your precious opera glasses, bring the receipt, bring the video, bring the proof. If you fire an employee after a meltdown with your child, that is not a civil wrong on its own. And if rent was usually paid and there's no receipt, because there were never receipts, the court looks at the pattern, the sense of the story, the reasons people do what they do, like bringing home a puppy when you believe the month is covered. The camera of memory zooms back over those 5 months. The bakery mornings where Jade learned the timing of ovens and the patience of dough. Addie's house where a fridge hummed, where shared spaces drew invisible lines on the floor. Telly's calls, the back-and-forth messages, the feeling that rules were getting tighter even while boxes were getting packed. The final day, May 13th, when tape cut the air and the 30-day rule rose like a wall. A laptop picked up and moved to the side, like a pawn piece that still stays on the board. Footsteps outside. A scream that sent adrenaline flying. A shove. A breath. An officer at the threshold. And then the kind of silence that follows sirens, the kind that makes you hear your own heart. Later, there would be photos, and words like battery, and words like overturned, and arguments about exactly where feet stood, and whether a knife was only a word or a shape in someone's mind. But in civil court, you cannot stamp your foot and ask the judge to feel what you felt. You must show what you can prove. That is the hard thing about justice. It trusts paper more than pain. Still, even as Judge Judy cut away the weak parts, there was a human truth beating under the law. Kindness without clear rules can sour. Rooms shared by employers and employees become loud with small power struggles. Who keeps what on which shelf? Who gets to say no to a dog? Who gets to pick up a laptop and put it on their side? Who decides when the rent is late if the pattern says on time? Why do people fight? Because home is not just walls, it is safety. And when safety feels threatened by a bill, by a voice, by a hand near a throat, people turn into weather. The courtroom tried to turn that storm into lines and checkboxes. Judge Judy spoke like a lighthouse. Call the police, wait and sue, bring proof. Don't play tug of war with other people's property. On the opera glasses, no receipt meant no recovery. On the rent, the balance of sense tilted toward Jade, enough that the judge was not satisfied with the landlord's claim. On the bakery firing, family wins. On the alleged assault by Jade's side, no report, no claim. And as Byard finally said, parties are excused, each person left with a different taste in their mouth. Miss Pedersen muttering that kindness had been mistaken for weakness, that next time she would not be so nice. Addie rubbing the place where law and pride met like two stones, Jade wiping at invisible fingerprints on her day, saying she had been traumatized, that doors and hands and words had pressed her into a bad shape. Tally holding the idea of the puppy in her chest like a quiet heartbeat, a small reminder that home should feel warm, not sharp. The lesson that floated in the cool hall like flower dust was not fancy. If you rent to someone you know, put everything in writing. Give receipts every single time. No pets means no pets until both sides sign an exception. If you think something is stolen, don't confront with force. Document, call, wait, sue. And if you want a judge to believe that an irreplaceable thing was wrongfully pawned, arrive with documents, names, dates, serial numbers, and video, not just a heavy heart. In the end, the story is simple in a way that hurts. A puppy wagged its tail. A landlord drew a line. A tenant packed a box. A laptop changed hands. A scream snapped the day. The police wrote a report. And Judge Judy measured the fragments by proof, not passion. And while the law closed its folder, the people carried on. Wiser, maybe, or at least warned, because courtrooms do not heal, they clarify. And sometimes clarity is the start of healing, especially when it tells you to slow down, to breathe, to set rules before you set a table, to make the easy words carry clear meaning. Pay on time. Write it down. Don't touch what is not yours. Be calm. Call help when you need it. And remember that kindness without boundaries is a door that slams in the wind. Lesson for listeners and viewers. In life and in law, proof beats passion, paper beats memory, and boundaries beat chaos. So make clear agreements, keep receipts, respect people's property, use the police instead of your fists, and never let a small puppy become the match that burns down a home.